We are just 10 days away from a possible U.S. debt default, and at this point, the economic future of this entire country comes down to these two, President Joe Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The two sat down in the Oval Office today to try and come up with a deal to raise the debt ceiling so the U.S. doesn't default on its massive debt for the first time in our history. And here's what we got.
I think we both agree we want to be able to come to an agreement. We both agree on the areas that we know there's disagreement on, but I think it was productive in the professionalism, the honesty with one another, and the desire to try to find common ground.
So great, that's optimistic, but none of that is a deal. I cannot emphasize this enough to you. Yes, both sides are still talking, but the divide between the Democrats and the Republicans is so wide on so many big things. Spending caps, by how long to raise the debt ceiling, work requirements, revenue, you name it. Now, as I've told you a million times, these issues aren't the only problem. At this point, it's the calendar that's the problem. The Treasury Secretary said again in a letter today, the U.S. could default as soon as June 1st. That is 10 days away. It's important to understand if or when a deal is reached, that's not the end of this issue. Problem solved. No. That's actually when the real work begins. So we have 10 days until this possible debt default, right? June 1st is just 10 days away. Now, I want you to imagine that we live in this very generous, very perfect world where literally everything goes according to plan, okay? So in this perfect world, let's just say if they come to a deal, it's going to take 1 day to write the legislation, to write this deal into a bill that the House and the Senate can vote on. Now, of course, it usually takes longer than 1 day, but let's just, again, generous world, right? So we have 10 days. So let's subtract 1 day from that. That leaves us with 9 days. Because of a concession that Speaker McCarthy made in order to win the Speaker's gavel, he has to give House members 72 hours to read any bill before it comes to the floor for a vote. So we've got to subtract 3 days from here. That leaves us with 6 days. Well, the House then has to vote, right? So in our perfect ideal world, let's say that vote takes 1 day. Now, usually takes a little longer to pass a bill in the House, but we're going to be generous here. We're going to say minus 1 day. That leaves us with 5 days. But don't forget, the Senate still has to vote on this. So we've got 5 days left, right? But because of the procedures in the U.S. Senate, it takes anywhere between 5 to 7 days to pass any type of legislation through the United States Senate. So again, we're in our generous, perfect world, right? So let's just say it takes 5 days. That leaves us with a big fat 0 days left to get a deal done. Now, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says he thinks that they can still get a deal either tonight or maybe tomorrow done, and there would still be time to avoid a default by June 1st. He says he's going to continue to speak with the president every single day until something gets done.